Hey there, let's talk about something really powerful today. Empathy. Now you might be wondering, what exactly is empathy? Simply put, empathy is the ability to feel and understand someone else's emotions as if you were experiencing them yourself. It's more than just knowing how someone feels. It's about connecting with them on a deeper level, feeling their joys and their struggles as your own. It's a shared human experience that can create bonds between us, even when we're from different walks of life. You might think empathy and sympathy are the same thing, but let me break it down for you. Sympathy is when you see someone going through something tough and you feel bad for them. You might say, "I'm sorry you're going through this." It's kind, but it keeps you at a distance. You're on the outside, looking in. But empathy is when you put yourself in their shoes. You don't just feel bad for them, you feel what they're feeling. You experience their pain and joy as if it were your own. So when someone is hurting, you're not just standing there watching, you're right there beside them, offering your heart. Now, I know you might be thinking, why is empathy so important, especially when I'm hurting too? Here's the thing, empathy is what helps us heal. When we open up and understand another person's pain, it reminds us that we're not alone. It connects us. When we feel understood, even for a moment, it gives us the strength to keep going. Neuroscience backs this up too. When we show empathy, our brains release oxytocin, the love hormone, and that feeling of connection can actually help reduce pain, both emotional and physical. Philosophers have known for centuries how important empathy is. Buddha once said, "Empathy is about finding echoes of another person in yourself." And I think that's beautiful. When we feel someone else's pain, we become more compassionate, not only toward them, but also toward ourselves. Empathy is more than just a soft, fluffy feeling. It's a tool that helps us heal. Think about Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor who found meaning even in the darkest of times by helping others. He said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." And that change, it often starts with empathy. It's how we grow stronger together. Empathy for others now. Let's dive into how empathy isn't just about understanding your feelings, but about understanding the feelings of others too. I want you to think about something for a second. Have you ever had someone really hear you when you were upset? Not just listen to your words, but actually feel what you were going through. That's the magic of empathy in action. When we show up for someone with empathy, it creates a bond that nothing else can. We're not just helping them feel better, we're sharing in their experience. And here's something that might surprise you. This act of understanding others' emotions actually builds stronger relationships. Think about it. When someone truly gets you, it's like a foundation for everything else. You trust them, you feel safe with them. Aristotle said, "Friendship is a single soul dwelling in two bodies." Empathy is the heart of that kind of deep, genuine connection. It's not just about agreeing with someone, it's about walking beside them, shoulder to shoulder, through their journey. But here's the real kicker. Empathy can also be a way to heal others. I'm not talking about fixing their problems, but about offering them a safe space to feel heard and understood. When you offer someone the gift of truly listening, of empathizing, you're giving them a chance to process their emotions and feel less alone. Think about that next time you see someone struggling. Sometimes the best thing you can do is simply listen without judgment. And guess what? When we give empathy, we actually receive something too. It might seem like you're giving your time and energy, but in return, you're building a sense of connection that can help you grow too. And that's what makes empathy so beautiful. It's a two-way street. Now let me share a quick story with you. There was a time in history when two people, Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk, decided to sit down, not as adversaries, but as human beings. Despite their deep political differences, they saw the humanity in each other and listened. That moment of empathy led to the end of apartheid in South Africa. Think about the power of that. Empathy isn't just for small personal moments. It has the power to change the world. But here's the thing about empathy. It's not just about feeling for others. It's about acting on that feeling. It's about moving past the initial "I feel for you" to actually doing something kind, even if it's just a simple gesture. Empathy has a ripple effect too. When you show kindness and understanding, others are inspired to do the same. It's like passing a torch of kindness, and soon it spreads through communities and beyond. You might just be one person, but your actions have the potential to create a wave of positive change. And remember, empathy isn't always easy. It means seeing beyond your own struggles and taking the time to understand someone else's. But it's worth it, because when you practice empathy, you're not just helping others, you're helping yourself grow into a more compassionate, understanding person. So I challenge you today, take a moment to really see someone else. Listen without judgment. Step into their shoes and show them that you understand. You'll be amazed at how much it can change both of you. Self-empathy. Hey, let's talk about something that's often overlooked. Self-empathy. You see, it's easy to show compassion to others, right? When someone else is hurting, we can almost instantly feel their pain and try to offer help. But what about you? Do you show yourself the same kindness? It's so easy to be hard on ourselves when things aren't going the way we want them to. We can be our own worst critics, beating ourselves up for mistakes, missteps, or not being where we think we should be in life. But self-empathy is about showing the same love and understanding to yourself that you would to a close friend. Think about this for a second. When you make a mistake, do you tell yourself, "I messed up, but that's okay. I'm human. I can learn from this and do better next time"? Or do you beat yourself up and spiral into negative thoughts? Take a moment to ask yourself, how kind are you to yourself when you fail? I want to remind you of something important here. We all have flaws, and we all fall short sometimes. But that doesn't mean we should reject ourselves. Ancient Greek philosopher Socrates said, "Know thyself." This means not just recognizing your strengths, but acknowledging your weaknesses and treating them with compassion. To know yourself To truly understand who you are, you must also embrace your imperfections with love, not judgment. Here's an interesting story that illustrates the power of self-empathy. There's a famous tale about the Japanese art of kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The idea behind it is that when something breaks, it's not thrown away. Instead, it's repaired in a way that highlights its imperfections, making it more beautiful in the process. The pottery doesn't become less valuable because it's cracked. It becomes even more precious. That's how you should think about your own struggles. You are not diminished by your hardships. In fact, you become more resilient, more beautiful, when you show yourself the same compassion and care that you'd show a loved one. Self-empathy is what allows us to heal emotionally. When you show yourself understanding, you create space for growth. If you're hard on yourself, you're essentially trapping your own heart in a cage. But when you treat yourself with empathy, you unlock the door to healing. Remember, when you make a mistake, it doesn't define you, it refines you. So here's a question to reflect on. When was the last time you forgave yourself for something you've done or failed to do? And I want you to really think about that, because until you show yourself that same empathy you show others, you'll keep carrying unnecessary burdens. And here's a powerful quote by Brené Brown, a researcher on vulnerability and empathy. Talk to yourself like you would to someone you love. If you wouldn't say something harsh to a friend who's struggling, why would you say it to yourself? You see, when you practice self-empathy, you are giving yourself permission to heal. It's not about perfection. It's about being human, embracing your vulnerability, and learning from every experience. Self-empathy helps you get through tough times, not by pretending you're okay, but by truly accepting yourself, flaws and all. The role of active listening. Now, let's talk about something else that goes hand in hand with empathy. Active listening. You might be thinking, listening? How does listening help me or others heal? Well, let me tell you, it's one of the most powerful tools we have for emotional connection and growth. Here's the thing, most of the time we're not really listening. We're thinking about what we're going to say next, or we're distracted by our phones, or maybe we're just waiting for the other person to finish so we can jump in with our own thoughts. But active listening is different. Active listening means truly being present in the moment, hearing every word the other person says and feeling the weight of their emotions, not just the content of their word. Here's something to think about. The next time someone shares their feelings with you, try this. Instead of thinking about your response, just listen. Really listen. And I don't mean the kind of listening where you're just nodding along. I mean listen with your heart. Feel their words. Let them sink in. Active listening allows you to connect with someone on a deeper level than just exchanging words. It helps them feel seen, heard, and understood. And in turn, it gives you the power to offer empathy in a way that can change their entire experience. You see, when people feel like they're truly being listened to, it's like they're being validated. They're not alone in their pain. They've been heard, and that means the world. There's a beautiful story about a young boy named Sam who felt lonely after moving to a new school. One day he met an elderly man in the park and they struck up a conversation. The man didn't offer any advice. He didn't try to fix Sam's problem. He simply listened, asked Sam questions, and allowed him to share his feelings. That day, Sam left with a new sense of hope, not because the man had given him answers, but because the man had truly listened. Active listening is one of the most healing gifts you can offer someone. When you listen without judgment, you're telling that person, your feelings matter, you matter. And in a world where so many people feel unseen or unheard, that's a rare and precious gift. Let me ask you, when was the last time you listened to someone not to respond, but simply to understand? Think about how that person might have felt, how your attention and empathy might have lifted them up. And what about you? How did you feel after giving them that gift of presence? You see, listening is not just a passive act. It's a powerful tool for connection. And when we practice active listening, we begin to understand others more deeply, which makes us more empathetic and compassionate. It's a way to support someone without trying to fix them. It's a way to show love, not through words, but through presence. Now ask yourself, how often do you let someone finish speaking without interrupting or offering advice? The next time you have a conversation, make a conscious effort to really listen. Watch how the conversation changes. Watch how the person feels. Because in truly listening, you give the gift of connection, and that can heal more than you might realize. Conclusion for both sections. I want you to reflect on these thoughts. When was the last time you showed yourself some love and understanding? When did you really listen to someone's heart, not just their words? These simple acts of empathy can heal not just the person you're listening to, but also yourself. Because the truth is, when we open our hearts to others and to ourselves, we create a space where both pain and growth can coexist. By practicing self-empathy and active listening, we become not only better at understanding others, but we also grow deeper into our own humanity. So today, I encourage you to practice these two things. Be kind to yourself and listen with your heart. You'd be surprised at how much peace and healing it can bring to you and to those around you. How to express empathy through gestures, words and actions. Now that we've explored empathy and the importance of listening and understanding, let's dive into something equally powerful: expressing empathy. It's one thing to feel empathy, but the real magic happens when you bring that empathy to life through your gestures, words, and actions. Think about this. When someone is going through a tough time, it's easy to feel for them. But how do you show them that you understand? How do you let them know that you see their pain and that you care? Well, the first step is to realize that empathy isn't just in your thoughts, it's in your behavior. It's in what you do and say to someone. Let's start with gestures. A kind gesture, even a small one, can be incredibly powerful. A hug, a pat on the back, or even a simple hand on the shoulder, these physical expressions tell someone, I'm here with you. You're not alone. You don't need to say anything sometimes. Just being there with them, showing you care through a touch, can speak volumes. But don't underestimate the power of words either. A few kind, well-chosen words can make all the difference in someone's world. Think of someone you love deeply. When they're struggling, what do you say? Do you tell them, "I'm here for you," or "I understand what you're going through, and I believe you'll get through this"? Words have the ability to comfort, uplift, and even heal. And while words can never replace actions, they can certainly support them. Then, of course, there's the importance of action. Empathy isn't just about what you say, it's about what you do. It's the friend who drops off a meal when you're feeling down, the colleague who helps you with a task even though they're busy, or the stranger who offers a kind smile when you're having a hard day. These actions are not just random, they're expressions of empathy in motion. Here's a story that beautifully illustrates this. There's a famous story of a woman who was struggling with depression and felt completely alone. One day, a neighbor, who had noticed her quiet struggles, decided to take action. Without saying much, the neighbor simply knocked on her door and handed her a warm meal with a smile, saying, "I thought you might enjoy this." That small, simple gesture didn't fix the woman's depression, but it did show her that someone cared. It was enough to remind her that she wasn't invisible, and that connection, even in the smallest form, can be enough to spark hope. So I want to ask you, how do you express empathy in your life? When was the last time you offered a kind word or a simple gesture to someone who was struggling? How do you show others that you care, not just through your thoughts, but through your actions? Remember, empathy isn't just a feeling. It's something you can express in a million small ways, every day. And those small acts of empathy can make a world of difference to someone who's struggling. How small acts of empathy can change someone's day and encouraging empathy in communities. Sometimes we think empathy has to be grand, something monumental, like solving a person's problems or changing their entire life. But here's the truth. Small acts of empathy can be just as, if not more, powerful than grand gestures. A smile, a compliment, an offer to listen. These little things can change someone's entire day. Think about a time when you were having a rough day. Maybe you were stressed out or feeling down, and then, out of nowhere, someone did something small for you. A friend sent a message just to check in, or a stranger held the door open for you when your hands were full. How did that make you feel? Even something simple like that can make all the difference. It's a reminder that there's kindness in the world. It reminds us that we're not alone. Here's an example from the world of psychology. A study found that people who perform random acts of kindness, even small ones, report feeling happier themselves. It's like the act of empathy is a gift that comes full circle. When we share kindness, it not only brightens someone else's day, it lights up our own world too. And when you think about how small acts of empathy can change someone's day, I want you to think about the ripple effect. Imagine how one simple act of kindness can spread, like a pebble thrown into a pond. That person might then go on to do something kind for someone else, and it creates a cycle of goodness. Small acts of empathy lead to bigger changes. They create a culture of kindness, where everyone feels seen, heard, and supported. Now, let's talk about something even more powerful. Encouraging empathy in communities or groups. This is where we can make a real difference, not just on an individual level, but on a collective one. When empathy becomes a shared value in a group, it can transform everything. It could be a family, a group of friends, a workplace, or even a larger community. If everyone in that group prioritizes empathy, it creates a culture where people feel valued, understood, and supported. Think about any great movement in history, whether it's social justice, human rights, or even local initiatives. What makes those movements powerful? It's not just the ideas. They're powered by the collective empathy of people coming together, understanding each other's struggles, and fighting for a shared cause. Communities that practice empathy are healthier, more resilient, and more connected. There's a powerful story from a small town where a community came together to support a family who had lost everything in a fire. Rather than just feeling bad for them, the community rallied. Neighbors brought over clothes, meals, and even furniture. They didn't just sympathize, they actively helped, showing empathy in every way they could. And that wasn't just a one-time thing. That spirit of empathy continued to grow, turning that small town into a place where people genuinely cared for each other. It was a community built on empathy and action. So let me ask you, what small act of empathy can you do today to brighten someone's day? Maybe it's sending a text to check on a friend, holding the door open for someone, or just offering a smile to a stranger. How can you create a ripple of kindness? And when it comes to communities, how can you help create a culture of empathy in your family, group of friends, or workplace? How can you encourage others to not just feel for each other? 7. The benefits of practicing empathy in your own life now. Let's dive into something really powerful. The benefits of practicing empathy in your own life. You might be thinking, what's in it for me? Why should I take the time and energy to practice empathy, especially when I'm dealing with my own challenges? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the truth is, empathy not only helps others, it helps you too. Think about this for a moment. When you practice empathy, you open yourself up to understanding others more deeply. And that understanding fosters deeper connections, builds trust, and creates meaningful relationships. But here's the twist. Those relationships don't just enrich the other person's life, they enrich yours too. Empathy creates a bond between people. It gives you the power to connect with others on a level that's not surface deep, but soul deep. When you connect with someone through empathy, you don't just see their circumstances, you understand their heart, their pain, their joys, and their struggles. And that mutual understanding creates a foundation of trust and respect that can support you both through tough times. But there's even more to it. Practicing empathy can actually make you a stronger person. It's easy to assume that feeling for others and putting yourself in their shoes might make you more vulnerable or overwhelmed. But research shows that practicing empathy actually builds emotional resilience. The more you practice empathy, the more your brain and your heart become wired to handle stress, pain and adversity in a healthier way. When you're empathetic, you learn to navigate your own emotions more effectively because you're able to put things into perspective. You realize that everyone has struggles, and you learn how to support both others and yourself through the hard times. Here's a story that illustrates this beautifully. There's a man named Viktor Frankl, a psychologist and Holocaust survivor who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. In the book, Frankl talks about how, even in the most horrific circumstances, empathy played a crucial role in his survival. While he was in concentration camps, he found that showing empathy to others, even in the face of suffering, helped him maintain his sense of humanity. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about finding meaning through connecting with others. Frankl wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That's the power of empathy. It's not just about changing someone else's experience. It's about transforming your own experience. By practicing empathy, you become more emotionally resilient, more compassionate, and more connected to the world around you." So, here's a reflective question for you. How does practicing empathy make you feel? When you listen to someone, when you understand their struggles, how does it change your perspective on your own life? What do you learn about yourself through the act of caring for others? The truth is, empathy has the potential to transform your life from the inside out. It helps you grow as a person, deepens your relationships, and makes you more connected to the world around you. So why not embrace it? Because when you do, you unlock a life of meaning, connection, and resilience. Overcoming barriers to empathy. Now, let's address something that's often overlooked when it comes to empathy: the barriers to empathy. Practicing empathy is beautiful, but it's not always easy. There are moments when we might struggle to connect with others, or even with ourselves. So, what gets in the way? What are the barriers to empathy? And how can we overcome them? The first barrier to empathy is judgment. Let's be honest, we all have moments where we judge others. Maybe someone's struggling in a way you don't understand, or maybe their choices seem completely different from your own. It's easy to jump to conclusions or criticize, but this stops us from being able to truly empathize. Empathy requires us to let go of judgment and open our hearts to understanding. To overcome judgment, think of it this way: every person you meet is fighting a battle you don't see. Everyone has a story. You may not agree with their choices or actions, but that doesn't mean they don't deserve your understanding. The next time you feel judgment creeping in, pause and remind yourself that there's always more beneath the surface. Challenge yourself to listen without judgment and to understand their perspective. Ask yourself, how would I feel if I were in their shoes? You can overcome emotional exhaustion by setting healthy boundaries and learning to practice self-care. Remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself, replenish your energy, and when you feel ready, you can offer empathy to others again. Empathy requires emotional bandwidth, and the more you care for your own well-being, the more capable you'll be of showing up for others. A final barrier to empathy is lack of perspective. Sometimes we can't empathize with someone because we haven't experienced what they're going through. How can you understand the pain of losing a loved one if you haven't experienced that loss yourself? How can you feel someone struggle with illness if you've never been sick? These are tough questions, but the beauty of empathy is that it's not about having the same experiences. It's about the willingness to try to understand, to overcome this. Embrace the idea that you don't have to have been in someone else's shoes to show you care. You can still offer a listening ear, a kind word, or a helping hand. Your empathy doesn't have to come from shared experience. It can come from shared humanity. Ask questions, listen deeply, and let their story touch your heart. This is how you connect with someone on a deeper level, even if you don't fully understand what they're going through. Let me ask you, what barriers have you faced when trying to be empathetic with others? Do you find judgment creeping in, or perhaps emotional exhaustion? And when you feel a lack of perspective, what can you do to remind yourself that empathy comes from your heart, not your experiences? The key to overcoming barriers to empathy is mindfulness. By recognizing these barriers and taking intentional steps to overcome them, you can open your heart to a deeper understanding of others and create more meaningful, supportive connections. Change. How empathy can transform your relationships. Empathy is a bridge that connects people on a deeper, more meaningful level. It's like a secret ingredient that makes your relationships, whether with friends, family, or romantic partners, stronger and more fulfilling. But how exactly does it transform relationships? Let's take a moment to explore that. Think about the most important relationships in your life. What makes them work? Is it the laughter you share, the support you give, or perhaps the way you understand each other's hearts even when you don't always agree? At the core of every strong relationship, you'll find empathy. It's what allows you to see beyond the surface and truly understand the other person. Empathy allows you to read between the lines, noticing the unspoken feelings, the subtle shifts in behavior, or the change in tone of voice. Have you ever been in a situation where someone just gets you, where they don't need to say much, but you can feel that they understand your struggles, your joys, your fears? That's the power of empathy. In romantic relationships, empathy is essential for maintaining connection and intimacy. It helps partners navigate the ups and downs of life, keeping the relationship strong through the toughest challenges. When empathy is present, there's less blame and more understanding. There's less anger and more compassion. Partners can share their vulnerabilities without fear of judgment because they know the other person will listen with an open heart. In friendships, empathy builds trust. It's what makes friends feel seen, heard, and valued. It's the reason why when you're struggling, your friends can simply sit with you, offering a comforting presence that means more than words could ever express. Empathy in friendships fosters the kind of bond that transcends time and distance. Even when life gets busy or you're miles apart, that understanding and mutual care keeps the friendship alive and strong. And with family, Empathy is often the glue that holds everything together. It's what allows family members to accept each other's differences, work through conflicts, and support one another unconditionally. Without empathy, families can drift apart, misunderstand each other, and feel isolated even within the same household. But when empathy is at the heart of family relationships, there's always room for growth, forgiveness, and deeper connection. Here's a powerful story about empathy in relationships. There's a couple who had been together for years, and like many relationships, they faced their fair share of difficulties. But the key to their lasting bond was empathy. Instead of assuming they knew what the other person needed, they always asked questions. They listened carefully. They didn't try to fix things immediately, but allowed each other to express their feelings fully. This commitment to understanding each other's emotional needs brought them closer, and their relationship grew stronger with each passing challenge. So, I want you to pause and reflect on your own relationships. How do you express empathy with the people you care about? Think about the last time you truly listened to someone without offering advice, without trying to fix things. What did that moment feel like? How did that deepen your connection with them? Empathy doesn't just strengthen relationships, it transforms them into something more beautiful, more authentic, and more supportive. When you practice empathy, you create a space for mutual care, understanding, and love to flourish. The role of empathy in creating a better world. Imagine a world where everyone practiced empathy, where people truly understood each other, listened deeply, and cared for one another. Can you picture it? That world would be radically different from the one we live in today. But the good news is, we have the power to make that world a reality, one small act of empathy at a time. Empathy is the foundation of a kinder, more compassionate world. It's the antidote to hatred, division, and conflict. When we choose to empathize with others, we stop seeing them as other and start seeing them as part of our shared human experience. We understand that everyone has their own battles, struggles, and joys, and that we're all connected in this journey of life. Think about how empathy can address global issues too, whether it's in politics, business, or social justice. Empathy can help create solutions that are not just about winning or succeeding, but about lifting others up. Imagine leaders who make decisions based not just on logic, but on understanding the needs and perspectives of others. Imagine communities working together to solve problems, with empathy at the core of every conversation and decision. One of the greatest philosophers of all time, Mahatma Gandhi, once said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." This quote speaks to the immense power of personal responsibility. You can't wait for others to create the change you want to see in the world. It starts with you and the way you treat others. Empathy doesn't just change individuals, it changes the collective. Every time you show empathy, you contribute to the creation of a more loving, understanding world. There's a remarkable story about a town that was divided by race, politics, and socio-economic status. One day, a community leader decided to organize an event that would bring everyone together. The event wasn't about speeches or debates, it was about listening. They invited people from all walks of life to share their stories, to express their pain, and to offer solutions. By the end of the event, something remarkable happened. People who had once viewed each other with suspicion and fear began to see each other with compassion and understanding. That one act of listening, of practicing empathy, brought the community closer and laid the foundation for lasting change. So, I ask you, what role do you play in creating a more empathetic world? It starts with the way you interact with the people around you. How can you contribute to creating a culture of empathy in your community, workplace, or even globally? Ask yourself, what if everyone made a conscious decision to empathize with someone today? What if we all took a moment to listen to someone who feels unheard, or offered support to someone who feels alone? The impact would be profound. It would be a ripple effect that could transform the world. Whether you subscribe or not, it's all good. I just hope this video added something positive to you. But if you'd like more motivation and wisdom on your journey, you're always welcome to subscribe. Either way, keep growing, keep believing, and I'll see you in the next one.